The rain pounded the pavement like 1,000 fists, each drop a reminder of the night Ethan was cast out. At 17, he'd stood trembling on his family's porch, his father's voice ablaze. "No son of mine will live like that." Now, 8 years later, Ethan gripped the steering wheel of his delivery van, the address on the package burning into his memory, his childhood home, the place where love had turned to ash. Ethan's breath caught as he navigated the familiar streets of suburban Ohio. The town of Willow Creek hadn't changed much. Same picket fences, same manicured lawns, same suffocating silence. He was 25 now, a man shaped by struggle and survival. Yet the sight of his old neighborhood churned his stomach. The package in the passenger seat, a small, nondescript box, felt heavier than it should, as if it carried the weight of every unanswered question from his past. Why had his parents rejected him so completely? Could they ever see him as more than a disgrace? He pulled into the driveway, the crunch of gravel under the tires pulling him back to that night. He'd come out to his parents over dinner, his voice shaking but hopeful. His mother, Ellen, had gone pale, her fork frozen midair. His father, Richard, had stood, his face twisting with disgust. "Get out," he'd said, and Ethan's world collapsed. His younger brother, Tommy, only 14 then, had watched in silence, eyes wide with confusion. Ethan had packed a bag and left, the door slamming shut behind him, cutting off the life he'd known. Now, as he stepped out of the van, the rain soaked his jacket, clinging to his broad shoulders. Ethan was no longer the scrawny teen they'd discarded. Years of odd jobs, construction, bartending, now delivery, had built muscle and resolve. His sandy blonde hair was cropped short, his green eyes sharp with determination. He wasn't here to beg for forgiveness. He was here to do his job. But the sight of the red brick house, its porch light glowing like a false beacon of warmth, stirred something deep, a mix of anger, longing, and fear. The doorbell echoed through the house, a sound that once meant safety. Ethan braced himself, clutching the package. The door swung open, and there stood Ellen, older now, her hair streaked with gray. Her eyes widened, recognition dawning like a slow wound. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Delivery," he said flatly, holding out the package. His heart pounded, but he kept his face neutral, a shield against the flood of memories. Ellen's hands trembled as she took the box, her gaze searching his face for the boy she'd lost. "Ethan," she began, but he cut her off. "Just sign here." He thrust the clipboard forward, his tone clipped. He wasn't ready for her words. Not yet. Behind her, the house smelled of cinnamon and pine, the same as it always had, and it hit him like a punch. He caught a glimpse of the living room, same floral couch, same family photos on the mantel, minus any trace of him. Ellen signed, her fingers shaking. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's jaw tightened. He wanted to say no, to walk away and leave this chapter closed. But something in her eyes, grief, maybe regret, held him there. "Not now," he said, turning back to the van. As he drove away, the rain blurred the world, but not the image of her standing in the doorway, clutching the package like a lifeline. Ethan didn't know it then, but that moment was the first crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. Back in his small apartment in Columbus, Ethan collapsed onto the couch, the day's weight pressing down on him. The apartment was sparse, but he saw one-bedroom haven with mismatched furniture and a single photo on the fridge, him and Lucas, grinning by a lake last summer. Lucas, with his warm brown eyes and easy smile, was the one person who'd made Ethan believe in love again. They'd met 2 years ago at a coffee shop where Ethan was working. Lucas, a graphic designer with a knack for seeing beauty in chaos, had ordered a latte and lingered, sketching in a notebook. Ethan had noticed him, how could he not? Lucas's dark curls fell just so, and his laugh was like sunlight breaking through clouds. They talked for hours that first day, and soon, coffee dates turned into late-night walks, then stolen kisses under streetlights. Lucas was everything Ethan's family hadn't been: accepting, kind, home. Tonight, Lucas was sprawled on the couch, sketching on his tablet when Ethan walked in. "Rough day?" Lucas asked, glancing up. His voice was gentle, but he knew Ethan's tells the tight jaw, the faraway look. Ethan sighed, dropping his keys on the counter. "Delivered to my old house today. Saw my mom." The words felt like stones in his mouth. Lucas set the tablet down, his full attention on Ethan. "What happened?" "Nothing. Just." Handed her the package. She looked like she wanted to say something, but I couldn't deal. Ethan sank beside Lucas, their shoulders brushing. Lucas's hand found his. A quiet anchor. "You don't have to face them alone," Lucas said. "But you don't have to face them at all if you're not ready." Ethan nodded, but the truth was, he wasn't sure what he was ready for. The delivery had been a coincidence, but it felt like fate testing him. Could he confront the family that had thrown him out for being gay? Did he even want to? That night, as Lucas slept beside him, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Memories of Willow Creek flooded back: bike rides with Tommy, his mom's laughter at Christmas, his dad teaching him to throw a baseball. They'd been a family once, before his truth shattered it. Now, he was a stranger in their world, a delivery man passing through. But the package wasn't the only thing he'd left behind today. A small, stubborn part of him wanted answers. Maybe even forgiveness, not for himself, but for them. The next morning, Ethan's phone buzzed with a new delivery order. His stomach dropped when he saw the address: his parents' house again. 2 days in a row. It couldn't be random. He considered passing the job to someone else. But something, curiosity, defiance, made him accept it. This time, he'd be ready. He drove back to Willow Creek, the package a twin to yesterday's. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and the lawns gleaming. As he approached the house, he noticed a figure on the porch: Tommy, now 22, leaning against the railing. Ethan's heart lurched. His little brother was taller now, his hair darker, but those blue eyes were unmistakable. "Ethan," Tommy called, stepping forward. His voice was deeper, but it carried the same uncertainty from that night 8 years ago. "Delivery," Ethan said, holding up the package, but his voice softened. Tommy wasn't the one who'd kicked him out. He'd just been a kid, caught in the crossfire. Tommy took the package, his gaze locked on Ethan. "You look different." "Good, though." He hesitated, then added, "I didn't know you were back in town." "I'm not," Ethan said. "Just passing through for work." Tommy nodded, but his eyes said he wanted more. "Mom's been a mess since yesterday. She didn't think you'd ever come back." Ethan's throat tightened. Didn't plan to. He turned to leave, but Tommy's voice stopped him. "Ethan, wait. I'm sorry. For back then. I didn't understand." Tommy's words were raw, like they'd been bottled up for years. Ethan paused, his hand on the van's door. "You were just a kid, Tommy. It's not on you." But as he drove away, Tommy's apology lingered, a thread pulling at the seams of his resolve. Maybe not everyone in that house had written him off. Maybe there was still something worth salvaging. Ethan's van rumbled through Willow Creek's quiet streets, the third delivery to his parents' house in as many days. The coincidence felt like a cosmic joke, each package a summons to a past he'd tried to bury. As he pulled into the driveway, his pulse quickened. Tommy was there again, this time sitting on the porch steps, a nervous energy in his posture. Ethan stepped out, package in hand, and met his brother's gaze. Tommy stood, brushing dirt off his jeans. "You're gonna think we're stalking you," he said with a half smile, but his eyes were serious. "Mom ordered these on purpose. She's been trying to see you." The words hit Ethan like a gust of wind. His mother, orchestrating these deliveries. Part of him wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but another part felt the old wound reopen. She could have called. Ethan said, his voice colder than he meant. He handed Tommy the package, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact sparked a memory, Tommy clinging to him after a nightmare. A little brother who'd once seen him as a hero. She didn't think you'd answer. Tommy said. And Dad. He's still Dad. But he's not home right now. Tommy glanced at the house, then back at Ethan. She's inside. Will you talk to her? Ethan's instinct was to say no, to climb back into the van and drive until Willow Creek was a speck in his rear view. But Tommy's plea, raw and unguarded, rooted him to the spot. He nodded once, sharp, and followed his brother inside. The house was a time capsule. The same oak dining table, the same faded curtains, the same scent of cinnamon lingering in the air. Ellen stood in the kitchen, her back to them, stirring something on the stove. When she turned, her face crumpled at the sight of Ethan. You came, she whispered, as if afraid speaking louder would scare him away. I'm here for the delivery, Ethan said, holding up the clipboard. But his voice lacked the edge he'd planned. Standing in this kitchen, where he'd once helped her bake cookies, he felt like a ghost haunting his own life. Ellen set down her spoon, her hands twisting in her apron. Ethan, I've thought about you every day. I was wrong. We were wrong. Her voice broke, and she took a step toward him. I didn't know how to fix it. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to believe her, to let her words bridge the years of silence. But the memory of that night, her silence as his father screamed, was a wall between them. You didn't stop him, he said quietly. You let him throw me out. Ellen flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. I was scared. I didn't understand. But I've learned. Ethan, I've read. I've talked to people. I know now what I should have known then. She reached for him, but he stepped back, the clipboard a barrier. I need you to sign, he said, his voice steady but hollow. She signed, her hand shaking, and he turned to leave. Tommy followed him to the porch, his expression torn. She's trying. Ethan, Tommy said. She's been going to this group. Like, for parents of, you know. She's different now. Ethan paused, his hand on the van's door. And Dad? He asked, already knowing the answer. Tommy's silence was enough. Ethan drove off, the house shrinking in his mirror. But Ellen's tears stayed with him. He didn't know if he could forgive her. Not yet. But her words had planted a seed, fragile and uncertain. Back in Columbus, Lucas was waiting, a pizza box open on the coffee table. 3 days in a row, he said, raising an eyebrow as Ethan recounted the delivery. That's not a coincidence. That's a cry for help. Ethan sank onto the couch, stealing a slice. She says she's sorry. Says she's changed. But it's not just her. My daughter's the one who made it clear I wasn't welcome. He chewed slowly, the pizza tasteless against the knot in his stomach. Tommy's different, though. He's trying to bridge things. Lucas leaned closer, his hand resting on Ethan's knee. What do you want out of this? Closure. Reconciliation. You don't owe them anything. You know. Ethan stared at the pizza box, the question echoing in his mind. What did he want? For years, he'd carried the pain like a badge, proof he'd survived. But seeing his mother, hearing Tommy's apology, stirred something else, a longing for family. Not the one that hurt him, but the one they could have been. I don't know, he admitted. Part of me wants to keep driving, pretend they don't exist. But another part, maybe I need to hear them out, just to know why. Lucas squeezed his hand. Whatever you choose. I'm here. But don't let them pull you back into their mess if it's going to break you. That night, Ethan dreamed of the lake behind their old house, where he and Tommy used to skip stones. In the dream, Lucas was there, laughing, his hand warm in Ethan's. When he woke, the dream lingered, a reminder of the life he'd built, one worth protecting. The next day, another delivery order came for Willow Creek. Ethan's hands shook as he accepted it. This wasn't just about packages anymore. It was about facing the family that had rejected him. He drove to the house, the familiar dread mixing with something new resolve. If they wanted to talk, he'd listen, but on his terms. This time, both Ellen and Tommy were on the porch, as if they'd been waiting. Ellen held a small envelope, her expression cautious but hopeful. "This isn't a delivery order," she said, holding it out. "It's for you." Ethan took the envelope, his fingers brushing the paper. It was light, but it felt like it could change everything. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low. "Open it later," Ellen said. "When you're ready." He nodded, tucking it into his jacket. Tommy stepped forward, his voice earnest. "We're not giving up, Ethan. Not this time." As Ethan drove away, the envelope burned in his pocket. He didn't open it, not yet. But for the first time, he felt a flicker of possibility, like a door he'd thought locked forever might just be cracked open. Ethan's fingers traced the edges of the envelope as he sat in his van, parked a block from his parents' house. The weight of it light as paper, heavy as memory kept him from opening it. Whatever was inside, it was a step toward a reckoning he wasn't sure he wanted. He drove back to Columbus, the envelope untouched on the passenger seat. Lucas was at a client meeting, so the apartment was quiet, giving Ethan too much space to think. He set the envelope on the kitchen counter, staring at it like it might speak. Finally, he slid it open, pulling out a single sheet of paper in his mother's neat handwriting. "Ethan, I've written this letter 100 times in my head, but words can't undo what we did. I failed you as a mother, and I live with that every day. If you're willing, I want to talk, to listen, to try. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I love you. Mom." The words blurred as Ethan's eyes stung. He read it again, then again, each pass carving deeper into the armor he'd worn for years. Love. She hadn't said that word the night he was thrown out. He folded the letter, tucking it into his wallet, not ready to respond, but unable to throw it away. The next day, another delivery order came for Willow Creek. Ethan's stomach twisted, but he accepted it, driven by a need he couldn't name. When he arrived, Tommy was alone on the porch, tossing a baseball into the air. The sight tugged at Ethan's memories of catch in the backyard, before everything broke. "Hey," Tommy said, catching the ball. "You read it." Ethan nodded, handing over the package. "Yeah. Doesn't change what happened." "I know," Tommy said, his voice low. "But she's been trying. She goes to this PFLAG group. Talks about you all the time. Dad's, he's harder to crack." Ethan's jaw tightened at the mention of his father. Richard's voice still echoed in his nightmares, cold and final. "He still think I'm a mistake." Tommy hesitated, then shook his head. "He doesn't talk about it. But he's different too. Quieter. I think he's scared you're gone for good." Ethan didn't know what to make of that. He turned to leave, but Tommy grabbed his arm. "Come to dinner. Just you, me, Mom. Dad's out of town for work. One meal. Ethan, please." The invitation hung in the air, heavy with risk. Ethan wanted to say no, to protect the life he'd built with Lucas. But Tommy's eyes hopeful, desperate, made him pause. "I'll think about it," he said finally, climbing into the van. That night, he told Lucas about the letter and the dinner invite. Lucas listened, his expression calm but searching. "What's your gut telling you?" he asked, pouring them both coffee. "That I'll regret it either way," Ethan said, half laughing. "If I go, it might hurt. If I don't, I'll always wonder." Lucas set his mug down, his hand finding Ethan's. "You're stronger than you think. If you go, you're not that kid they threw out. You're you, someone who built a life despite them. And I'll be here, no matter what." Ethan squeezed his hand, gratitude swelling in his chest. Lucas was his anchor, his reason to believe in second chances. Maybe he could give his family one. Two, not for them, but for himself. The next evening, Ethan stood on his parents' porch, heart pounding like it had 8 years ago. Tommy answered the door, his grin nervous but warm. "You came," he said, pulling Ethan into a quick, awkward hug. It was the first time they'd touched in years, and it felt like coming up for air. Inside, the dining room was set for 3. The table laden with roast chicken and mashed potatoes, Ethan's favorite as a kid. Ellen emerged from the kitchen, her smile tentative. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Dinner was quiet at first, the clink of forks loud in the silence. Ethan focused on his plate, the food familiar yet foreign. Finally, Ellen spoke. "I've been going to a support group," she said. "Parents of gay kids. I learned how much I hurt you, Ethan. I didn't know how to handle it back then, but that's no excuse." Ethan set his fork down, his throat tight. "You didn't say anything. You just watched him kick me out." Ellen's eyes filled with tears. "I was weak. I thought I was protecting the family, but I lost you instead. I'd give anything to go back." Tommy reached for her hand, then looked at Ethan. "I didn't get it either, back then. But I missed you. Every day." Ethan's chest ached. He wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the pain that had kept him going. But their words, their faces, chipped away at it. "I survived," he said, his voice low. "I built a life. I have someone who loves me for who I am." Ellen's face lit up, a mix of joy and sorrow. "Will you tell me about him?" Ethan hesitated, then spoke. "His name's Lucas. He's a designer. Makes the world prettier than it is. He's home." Saying it out loud felt like claiming a victory. Ellen nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I'd like to meet him someday, if you're okay with that." "Maybe," Ethan said, the word a small bridge. He wasn't ready to invite Lucas into this fragile space, but the possibility didn't scare him as much as it once would have. As he left that night, Tommy walked him to the van. "Dad's back tomorrow," he said. "He doesn't know you were here, but I think maybe he's ready to listen." Ethan doubted it, but he nodded. "Thanks for tonight, Tommy." He drove away, the house's lights fading behind him, but the warmth of the evening lingered. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't just a delivery man passing through, was part of something, even if it was broken. Ethan woke to the smell of coffee and Lucas humming in the kitchen. The dinner with his mom and Tommy had left him raw, like a bruise pressed too hard. But sharing it with Lucas eased the ache. "You think I should go back?" Ethan asked, cradling his mug. Lucas leaned against the counter, his eyes steady. "Only if you're ready to face your dad. He's the one who hurt you most. But you don't need his approval to be whole." Ethan nodded, the truth settling in. He didn't need Richard's blessing, but he wanted to look him in the eye, to show he'd thrived despite the rejection. Another delivery order came that morning, Willow Creek. Same address. Ethan's gut told him this wasn't Ellen's doing. He accepted it, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The drive felt shorter this time, the familiar streets less oppressive. When he pulled into the driveway, Richard stood on the porch, his broad frame unchanged, though his hair was thinner, his face lined. Ethan's heart thudded, but he stepped out, package in hand, his posture straight. "Ethan," Richard said, his voice gruff, no warmth in it. He took the package, his eyes narrowing. "You're the delivery guy now?" "Among other things," Ethan replied, keeping his tone even. He handed over the clipboard, but Richard didn't sign right away. Instead, he studied Ethan, like he was searching for the boy he'd thrown out. "Ellen told me you were here," Richard said finally. "Said you've got a life now. Hey, partner." The word came out like it tasted bitter. "Lucas," Ethan said, his voice firm. "He's my home. He met his father's gaze, refusing to flinch. This was the moment he'd dreaded, and Crevetto stand tall as himself. Unapologetic. Richard's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. I didn't understand back then. Still don't. Not really. But your mother's been tearing herself apart over you. Ethan's chest burned. And you? You sorry for what you did? Richard hesitated, his hands clenching the clipboard. I thought I was doing right by you. Thought I could fix you. I was wrong. The admission was quiet, almost lost in the breeze. But it landed like a thunderclap. Ethan didn't know what to say. He'd expected anger, denial, anything but this. You threw me out, he said, his voice shaking. I was 17. I had nowhere to go. Richard's eyes dropped to the ground. I know. I live with that. He signed the clipboard, his movement slow, then handed it back. You don't have to forgive me, but I'm asking for a chance to try. Ethan took the clipboard, his mind reeling. He'd spent years hating this man, building a life to prove he didn't need him. Now, Richard's words cracked that foundation, leaving Ethan unsteady. I'll think about it, he said, turning to the van. As he drove away, he felt the weight of the encounter settle in. Richard's apology wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a start. For the first time, Ethan saw a path forward, not to erase the past, but to build something new. Back in Columbus, Ethan and Lucas took a walk by the lake, the same one from the photo on their fridge. The water was calm, reflecting the late afternoon sun. Ethan told Lucas about Richard, the apology, the uncertainty. He said he was wrong. Ethan said, skipping a stone across the water. I didn't think he'd ever admit that. Lucas watched the ripples spread. Does it change anything for you? Ethan thought for a moment, the stone sinking into the lake's depths. It makes me think I could have a family again. Not the same one, but I want you to be part of it. If I do this. Lucas smiled, his hand slipping into Ethan's. I'm in. Whatever you decide. But you're my family first. They stood there, hands clasped, the sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. Ethan felt a peace he hadn't known in years, like the lake was washing away the sharp edges of his pain. He wasn't ready to forgive fully, but he was ready to try for himself. For Lucas. For the boy who'd been thrown out, but kept going. The next day, Ethan called Tommy. I'll come to dinner again, he said. But Lucas is coming with me. If that's a problem, I'm out. Tommy's voice was bright. No problem. Mom's been asking about him. Dad, he'll deal. The dinner was set for Sunday, and Ethan spent the days leading up to it preparing Lucas, warning him about Richard's gruffness, Ellen's tears, Tommy's hope. Lucas took it in stride, his calm confidence a balm to Ethan's nerves. When Sunday came, Ethan and Lucas arrived together, hand in hand. Ellen greeted them at the door, her smile warm but nervous. Tommy hugged them both, his enthusiasm infectious. Richard stood in the background, his expression unreadable but not hostile. Dinner was tense at first, the weight of history heavy in the room. But Lucas broke the ice, talking about his art, his love for vibrant colors, his life with Ethan. Ellen listened, her eyes bright with curiosity. Tommy asked questions, eager to know more. Richard was quiet, but he didn't interrupt, his gaze flickering between Ethan and Lucas. As the meal ended, Ellen brought out a photo album, one Ethan hadn't seen before. I kept these, she said, opening to a page of him as a kid gap-toothed, grinning, holding a fish he'd caught with Tommy. I never stopped loving you, Ethan. Ethan's throat tightened as he flipped through the pages, memories flooding back. Lucas squeezed his hand under the table, grounding him. Richard cleared his throat, his voice low. You're welcome here, Ethan. Both of you. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Ethan looked at Lucas, then at his family, and felt the pieces of his heart begin to realign, not whole, but closer than they'd ever been. The dining room glowed with candlelight, the air thick with the scent of roasted vegetables and unspoken hopes. Ethan sat beside Lucas, their hands brushing under the table, a quiet reminder of the life they'd built together. Across from them, Ellen smiled softly, her eyes lingering on the photo album still open on the table. Tommy cracked a joke about Ethan's old fishing skills, easing the tension. Richard, at the head of the table, was quieter, his fork moving slowly. But his presence wasn't the storm Ethan had feared. As dessert was served, apple pie, another nod to Ethan's childhood, Ellen spoke up. "I've been thinking about what family means," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "I lost sight of it when I let you go. Ethan, I want to be better. For you. For Lucas. For all of us." Ethan's chest tightened. He glanced at Lucas, whose warm eyes gave him courage. "I want that too," Ethan said. "But it's not just about saying sorry. It's about showing it. Every day." Richard shifted in his seat, his gaze meeting Ethan's for the first time that night. "I'm not good with words," he said gruffly. "But I see you now. You're not the kid I pushed away. You're a man, and you've done better than I ever did." He paused, his voice catching. "I don't deserve it, but I'd like to know you again. Both of you." The words hung in the air, raw and heavy. Ethan felt Lucas's hand squeeze his. "A silent I've got you." He nodded at Richard, not trusting his voice. It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully, but it was a door opening wider than he'd expected. After dinner, Tommy pulled Ethan aside on the porch. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice thick. "For coming back. For being you. I want to be in your life, Ethan. For real this time." Ethan hugged him, the embrace fierce and long overdue. "You always were, Tommy, even when I was gone." As Ethan and Lucas drove back to Columbus, the stars bright above, Ethan felt lighter, like he'd shed a weight he'd carried for years. "You think we can do this?" he asked Lucas, his voice soft. Lucas grinned, his hand resting on Ethan's thigh. "We're already doing it. You faced them, and you didn't break. That's what love does, it makes you brave." Months later, Ethan and Lucas returned to Willow Creek for Tommy's birthday. The house felt different now, less like a museum of pain, more like a place where new memories could grow. Ellen had framed a photo of Ethan and Lucas by the lake, placing it on the mantel beside the old family pictures. Richard asked Lucas about his latest art project, his questions halting but genuine. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Ethan stood by the lake behind the house, Lucas's arm around his shoulders. The water reflected the twilight, serene and unbroken. "This is home now," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Not just this place, you. Always you." Lucas kissed him, soft and sure, under the fading light. "Always," he echoed. The past would always be there, a scar on Ethan's heart, but it no longer defined him. He'd been thrown out for being gay, but he'd returned not as a delivery man, but as a man who'd found love, strength, and a family willing to try again. And in that, he found something more powerful than forgiveness, the courage to heal.